Get out of here. You have no right to be in this place. In 2 hours, Michael Davis would lose everything. The position he had built over 12 years of tireless work. The reputation that opened doors to the most exclusive hotels in the country. The respect his $60,000 Rolex automatically bought. Everything would crumble because of 8 words he said to a stranger in worn canvas shoes in the marble lobby of the Grand Colonial Hotel in its historic district. 8 words he considered justified. Your presence here offends our guests. Thursday morning had begun like any other at the Grand Colonial Hotel, nestled in the heart of the historic district, between charming colonial architecture and colorful houses that whispered tales of buccaneers and old money. Bentleys and Maseratis arrived in procession, dropping off businessmen in Italian linen suits and women with jewels that sparkled brighter than the southern sun. The air conditioning kept the ambiance at exactly 72 degrees, while the aroma of premium Colombian coffee drifted softly through the halls. Everything exuded luxury, tradition, and money that spoke in elegant whispers. But at 10:15 a.m., a yellowish-white 1992 Toyota Corolla with dents on the driver's door parked in the guest area. The bellhop frowned, checking his arrival list as if searching for a reservation that would explain such an unexpected presence. From the front seat, Frank Anderson, a 78-year-old man, descended. His back was slightly stooped by time, his completely silver hair simply combed. He wore a white cotton shirt with small coffee stains, beige khaki pants with permanent creases, worn brown leather loafers, and carried a frayed canvas bag that looked like it had seen better decades. Frank walked with measured but steady steps, the gait of someone who no longer races against the clock but knows every stone of the path. His green eyes observed everything with a silent attention that no one perceived. When he pushed the leaded glass door, the artificial cold enveloped him like an unasked-for embrace, but he showed no discomfort, only adjusted the strap of his bag and continued forward. The murmurs began before he fully crossed the lobby. "Who let that old man in?" whispered a blonde woman in a coral dress to her companion. "He's in the wrong place. The rest stop in is 3 blocks down," commented a young executive in a pink shirt while checking his gold iPhone. At reception, a young woman with perfect makeup and a navy blue uniform looked up from her computer and for an instant couldn't hide an expression of surprise mixed with disdain. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" she asked with that cordial tone that barely concealed impatience. "Good morning, young lady. I need to speak with the administration department," Frank replied in a calm, slightly rough voice, typical of someone who had lived decades by the sea. "Do you have an appointment scheduled?" She was already typing something, ready to politely direct him toward the exit. "No, but it's urgent. I need to review the financial statements for the last quarter." The receptionist blinked, then let out a nervous chuckle. "Sir, the administrative department only sees visitors by appointment, scheduled at least 48 hours in advance, and we generally work only with corporate vendors or guests of our presidential suites." Frank nodded calmly, as if he expected exactly that answer. "I understand. Then could you connect me with Michael Davis?" The silence was instant. The receptionist stopped typing. 2 nearby security guards exchanged tense glances. Michael Davis was not just any manager. He was the general manager, the man who had transformed the Grand Colonial Hotel into the most exclusive destination on the southern coast, the face on the covers of Forbes and Business Week, the 41-year-old prodigy who dined with tourism ministers and played tennis with airline magnates. "Mr. Davis does not receive visitors without an appointment and definitely does not see—" She vaguely gestured toward Frank's clothes without finishing the sentence, but the message was crystal clear. "Then, how can I get an appointment?" Frank asked, maintaining a polite tone without a trace of annoyance. The young woman sighed with poorly concealed impatience. "You can call the number on our website and schedule with the executive assistant. The process usually takes about 2 weeks." 2 weeks. Frank gently touched the inside of his cheek, an old habit he had when processing complicated information. He looked around the lobby, the imported Italian Carrara marble columns, the Baccarat crystal chandeliers, the paintings by renowned regional artists on the walls. Nothing there seemed to have changed since he himself had overseen every detail of the renovation 25 years ago, when the hotel was on the verge of closing and he invested all his capital to save it. "I'll wait here until he has a few minutes available," Frank said, heading toward one of the Italian leather armchairs. "Sir, you cannot remain here without being a registered guest or having a confirmed appointment. It's establishment policy." The receptionist now spoke louder, attracting the attention of more people. A guard approached. A robust man, arms crossed, and an intimidating posture. "Is there a problem, Ashley?" he asked, observing Frank from head to toe. "The gentleman doesn't have a reservation and wants to speak with the general manager," she explained with the tone of someone clarifying something obvious to a child. The guard stepped forward. "Sir, I'm cordially asking you to leave. If you need any basic hotel services, you can go to any of the inns in the historic district." Frank remained seated, his bag resting on his lap, his hands calmly resting on it. "I won't cause trouble. I just need 10 minutes with Mr. Davis. It's about the investments in the new hotel wing and the airline contracts." The guard laughed, a deep, condescending sound. "Buddy, I don't know where you're from, but we don't serve people who, well, you understand." He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood perfectly. At that moment, the executive elevator opened with a soft golden chime, and Michael Davis himself emerged, accompanied by 3 assistants, all in white linen suits and an air of controlled urgency. Michael was 5'11", with perfectly styled black hair using imported products, a beard trimmed by a personal barber every morning, and a limited edition Rolex Submariner on his left wrist. He walked with the confidence of someone who had never had to beg for anything, who was born understanding that the world would bow to his presence. He was talking on the phone, laughing at something when his eyes quickly scanned the lobby and stopped at the unusual scene. An humbly dressed old man sitting on the furniture reserved for VIP guests, being confronted by security. Michael ended the call and gestured to his assistants to wait. He approached with determined steps, the sound of his Italian shoes echoing against the polished marble. "What's going on here?" he asked in a firm voice directed at the guard but with his eyes fixed on Frank. "Mr. Davis, this man insists on speaking with you. We've already explained that he needs an appointment, but he refuses to leave," the guard quickly replied. Michael finally looked directly at Frank, and his eyes slowly scanned from the worn canvas shoes to the disheveled silver hair. A smile formed on his lips, not of kindness, but of cruel amusement. "And you are?" he asked, crossing his arms. "Frank Anderson," the old man replied, standing up with some difficulty, his right hand extended for a handshake that was not reciprocated. Michael didn't even move his hands. "Mr. Anderson, this hotel has standards. We don't cater to just anyone who walks in off the street wanting to discuss multi-million-dollar investments. You understand the paradox of the situation, don't you?" Frank slowly lowered his hand. "I understand perfectly, young man, but I assure you I have legitimate reasons for being here." "I'm sure you do." Michael laughed again, and his assistants accompanied him like an obedient chorus. "Let me guess. You won the lottery and want to reserve the presidential suite. Or maybe you inherited a large estate and think it's worth millions." The humiliation was public. Now at least 20 people watched the scene, some disguising smiles, others shaking their heads in silent disapproval. Frank took a deep breath, his fingers lightly tightening the strap of his bag. "Mr. Davis, I came here because there are financial movements in the hotel that require immediate attention. If you'll allow me to show you some documents." "Documents?" Michael interrupted him, his voice rising a tone. "What documents could you possibly have that would interest me? A utility bill? An expired ID?" The assistants laughed louder. Now Frank felt the heat rise in his neck, not from shame, but from a contained indignation he hadn't experienced in years. "I have the first quarter financial reports." "Enough!" Michael dramatically raised his hand. "Mr. Anderson, or whatever your name is, I'm going to explain something very simple. You have no value here. Your presence is bothering our real guests. It's spoiling the atmosphere we've worked years to build." The lobby fell into absolute silence. Even those conversing in distant corners stopped to watch. Frank looked around, seeing the faces. Some seemed embarrassed. Others clearly approved of Michael's attitude. Then his eyes found a young employee near the entrance, perhaps about 28 years old, who was observing him with a different expression. It wasn't pity. It was indignation. Indignation directed at Michael. She took a hesitant step forward. "Mr. Davis, with all due respect, perhaps we could listen to what the gentleman has to say." She began to speak, but Michael cut her off with an icy stare. "Sarah, get back to your post. This is none of your business." She stepped back, but didn't take her eyes off Frank, as if wanting to silently apologize for the situation. Michael turned his attention back to Frank. "You have 20 seconds to leave on your own, or I'll call security to escort you out. And believe me, You don't want that to happen. Frank nodded slowly, as if finally accepting defeat. He put something inside his bag, took one last look around, and began to walk toward the exit. Michael watched with satisfaction, turning to his assistants. See that? This is why we have protocols. We can't allow just any... But he stopped speaking when he noticed that Frank wasn't heading toward the main door. He was walking toward the executive elevator. Hey, that elevator is private, Michael shouted, crossing the lobby. Frank had already pressed the button and the doors were opening smoothly. Before entering, he turned one last time, and for the first time, his eyes showed something more than calm. They showed a deep disappointment of the kind that hurts more than anger. Michael Davis, he said in a low voice but clear enough for everyone to hear. In 30 minutes, you're going to wish you had been more respectful. You're going to wish you had listened to me, but most of all, you're going to wish you had never said that I have no value here. And with that, he entered the elevator. The doors closed before Michael could react. The general manager stood motionless, an expression of confusion and rage mixed on his face. What the hell? Security, stop him. But it was too late. The elevator was ascending, and Frank Anderson, the man with no value, was on his way to the 5th floor, to the board of directors' office, the only place in the hotel where his word was worth more than that of any other living human being. Are you feeling that tension, that chill down your spine? Because what's about to happen in the next few minutes will completely change everything you've just read. If you want to know who Frank Anderson really is and how Michael Davis will react when he discovers the truth, then you need to like and subscribe to this channel. Now hit the bell icon, because stories like this that shake your emotions and make you question everything about prejudice and appearances are what we do here every day. Don't miss the end of this story. I guarantee you'll never forget it. The 5th floor of the Grand Colonial Hotel was not an ordinary place. There were no regular offices, no employees rushing with documents, no typical hotel administration hustle. It was an entire floor dedicated exclusively to the board of directors, with only 3 spaces: the main meeting room, the confidential document archive, and the private office of the board president, a position that had curiously been vacant for exactly 8 years, since the death of Mrs. Margaret Thompson, the founder, or so everyone believed. When the elevator doors opened on the 5th floor, Frank was greeted by a silent hallway of cedar wood flooring and mahogany-paneled walls. There was only one person there, a woman about 65 years old, gray hair pulled back in an elegant bun, reading glasses hanging from a gold chain over her impeccable white blouse. She looked up from the desk where she was working, and upon seeing Frank, her face lit up with a genuine smile that absolutely contrasted with all the expressions he had received downstairs. "Frank!" She quickly stood up, coming around the desk. "I didn't know you were coming today. Why didn't you let me know? I would have prepared your coffee just the way you like it." Frank smiled, his first truly genuine smile since entering the building. "Good morning, Susan. I didn't want to bother you. I just came to resolve a small matter." "Small?" She responded with the familiarity of someone who has worked with him for decades. "You never come for small matters, Frank. Do you need me to convene the board?" "Not yet. First, I need to make some calls. Is the private office available?" "It's always available for you, Frank. It's your office, after all." Susan accompanied him to a double solid wood door with colonial bronze details. When she opened it, she revealed an office that seemed intentionally frozen in time. There was an antique but impeccable executive desk, bookshelves filled with hotel administration and local history books, sepia photographs on the walls showing the hotel's evolution since 1963, and a panoramic window overlooking the historic waterfront and the clear blue ocean stretching to the horizon. Frank entered, placed his frayed bag on the desk, and sank into the leather chair. For a moment he just looked out the window, observing the city he had helped promote as a tourist destination, when no one else believed in this city's potential after the difficult times of the 90s. "Susan, could you connect me with David Miller?" he asked without taking his eyes off the view. "Mr. Miller from the Chamber of Commerce?" "That's the one." While Susan made the call, downstairs in the lobby, chaos was just beginning. Michael Davis was yelling at the guards as if they were criminals who had allowed a terrorist invasion. "Explain to me how that old man got to the 5th floor. That floor is restricted. Only board members have access." The head of security, a man about 45 years old named Mark, tried to explain while frantically consulting the electronic access log on his tablet. "Mr. Davis, according to the system, Mr. Frank Anderson has full access credentials, maximum executive level." Michael snatched the tablet from Mark's hands, his eyes scanning the screen with increasing disbelief. There it was, registered in the system since 1998. Frank Anderson, chairman of the board of directors, unlimited access to all floors, authority to convene emergency meetings, authorized signatory on all corporate accounts. This is impossible, Michael murmured, the color draining from his tanned face. This has to be a system error, a technical glitch, some old account that wasn't removed when what? Sarah, the young employee who had tried to defend Frank, appeared beside him. Her voice had that dangerous calm of someone who knows something others don't. Michael glared at her. When the previous president passed away, Mrs. Margaret died 8 years ago, and that position was never officially filled again. Are you sure? Sarah crossed her arms, and there was something in her posture that indicated she wasn't asking a rhetorical question. She knew something. Sarah, if you know something I don't, you'd better speak now, Michael said, his voice low but threatening. The young woman took a deep breath. She had worked in the accounting department before being transferred to reception, and part of her job was to digitize historical hotel documents, review old contracts, and ensure everything was in compliance with regulations. 2 years ago, while organizing legal archives, she had found something strange. A trust established in 1998 that owned 67% of the hotel's shares through a complex legal structure involving 3 companies in Panama, 2 in the United States, and 1 in the Virgin Islands. The ultimate beneficiary was hidden under layers of legal entities, but there was one name that appeared as administrator in all the documents: Frank Anderson. I'm not sure of anything, Sarah finally replied, but her voice betrayed the lie. But I think you should go up to the 5th floor and talk to him. Michael let out a nervous laugh. Talk to him? Talk to a delusional old man who probably forged an old credential. But even as he said that, his hands trembled slightly. Something in his instinct, the same instinct that had brought him to the top so quickly, was screaming that he had made a mistake. A gigantic mistake. At that moment, the receptionist Ashley's phone rang. It was an internal call from the 5th floor. Reception, good morning, she answered, her voice still altered by the dramatic scene she had witnessed moments before, but her expression quickly changed. Yes, I understand. Immediately, Mrs. Susan. She hung up and looked directly at Michael with sudden paleness. Mr. Anderson requests your immediate presence on the 5th floor. Presidential office. The silence that followed was interrupted only by the distant ocean waves and the discreet hum of the air conditioning. Michael swallowed audibly. Part of him wanted to laugh, to maintain the facade that all of this was absurd, some elaborate joke. But another part, the part that had made him successful, the part that knew how to read between the lines and detect danger, was on high alert. I'm going up, he finally said, adjusting his tie with hands that now trembled visibly. But I'm calling the hotel's lawyers to be present. If that man is trying some kind of scam. Michael, Sarah interrupted him, her voice soft but firm. I think you should go alone, and I think you should prepare to apologize. He glared at her in anger. Apologize? To a nobody who walked in here like it was his own house? Exactly, she replied, and there was something in her eyes that looked like pity, like it was his own house. Michael turned and walked toward the executive elevator, his posture erect but his steps less confident than before. His 3 assistants followed him in silence, none daring to comment. As the elevator ascended, Michael tried to organize his thoughts. Who was this man? Why did he have access to the 5th floor? And why, for the first time in years, did Michael Davis feel something he hadn't experienced since he was a freshly graduated intern? Genuine fear of losing everything. Upstairs, Frank was finishing his second call. The first had been with David Miller from the Chamber of Commerce, confirming some information about the new international airline contracts. The second was with his lawyer, Dr. John Roberts, one of the country's top specialists in corporate law. So it's confirmed, Frank. The lawyer's voice sounded over the speakerphone on the antique desk. Mr. Davis signed exclusivity contracts with 3 airlines without board approval, directly violating the administration clauses you yourself established in the 1998 bylaws. And the investments in the new wing? Frank asked, his voice tired. Also without approval. And the worst part is that costs have skyrocketed 340% above the original budget due to unauthorized design changes. The hotel could face losses of up to $20 million in the next semester if the course isn't corrected. Frank closed his eyes. It wasn't anger he felt. It was disappointment. disappointment in himself for having distanced himself so much, for having blindly trusted men like Michael Davis just because they had an MBA from Harvard and appeared on the covers of tourism magazines. He should have paid more attention. He should have come sooner. Thank you, Dr. Roberts. Stay available. We may need to convene an extraordinary meeting. Whenever you order, Frank. Just remember, legally you have every right, but in the media, this could explode. Davis is very popular in tourism circles. I don't care about popularity, Frank said softly. I care that the hotel I saved 25 years ago doesn't end up in ruins because of the arrogance of a boy in an expensive suit. He hung up just as the office door opened. Susan entered first, followed by Michael Davis and his 3 assistants. Michael's expression was a mixture of confusion, contained anger, and something new, uncertainty. He looked around the office, his eyes lingering on the old photographs, on the framed documents on the walls, on the honorary diploma from a prominent state university dedicated to Frank Anderson for his extraordinary contributions to American tourism, dated 2001. Mr. Anderson, Michael began, his voice still trying to sound authoritative but failing. I need you to explain what you're doing here and by what authority. Sit down, Frank interrupted him calmly, gesturing to the chairs in front of the desk. It wasn't a request. It was an order. And something in the tone made Michael, for the first time in years, obey without questioning. The 4 men sat down. Frank remained standing, walking slowly to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. For a long moment he just looked at the city below, at the tiny people moving through the colonial streets, caught in their routines, their ambitions, their fears. Michael Davis, he finally began without turning around. 6 years ago, when the board hired you as general manager, I voted in favor. I read your resume, I was impressed. Harvard, experience at 4 Seasons, excellent numbers in your previous work at a major Hilton property in Chicago. I thought, this young man will take the hotel to the next level. He turned slowly, his eyes meeting Michael's. But I forgot to check something more important than any degree or experience. What was that? Michael asked, his voice almost a whisper. Your character, your humanity, your ability to see people as more than just numbers on a financial statement. The silence in the room was absolute. One of Michael's assistants tried to say something, but Frank raised his hand, silencing him without words. This morning I came to this hotel dressed as I dress every day. I came in the car I've had for 15 years. I came without warning, without bodyguards, without flaunting who I am or what power I have. Do you know why, Michael? Michael didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat was dry, his heart pounding erratically. Because I wanted to see how they treat normal people here. The elderly, the humble, those who don't arrive in a Bentley or wear $25,000 watches. Frank approached the desk, placing both hands on the wooden surface, leaning forward. And you, Michael Davis, showed me exactly what I needed to see. You told me I have no value here. You publicly humiliated me. You treated me like dirt. Mr. Anderson, I didn't know who you were. Michael finally managed to speak, his voice trembling. Exactly, Frank said, and there was a deep sadness in his voice now. You didn't know who I was. So you decided I didn't deserve your time, your respect, your basic consideration as a human being. And do you know what's the saddest part? If I had arrived in a Mercedes in an Armani suit, with an entourage of lawyers, you would have treated me completely differently. Not because I was different, but because my appearance would be different. Michael bowed his head. There was no denying it now, no excuse he could offer. But that's not the worst part, Frank continued, returning behind the desk and opening his frayed bag. From it he pulled out a manila folder with documents. The worst part is that while you were busy judging old men by their clothes, you were making catastrophic administrative decisions that jeopardize everything this hotel represents. He tossed the folder onto the desk. Documents scattered, showing unauthorized contracts, construction cost overruns, ignored financial alerts, exclusivity contracts with airlines without board approval, investments in the new wing that exceeded the budget by 340% without consulting anyone. You directly violated the administration clauses that protect this hotel and its employees. Michael looked at the documents, the blood completely draining from his face. The investments were recommended by our architectural team. The numbers indicated that you should consult the board before committing those amounts. Frank cut him off, his voice rising for the first time. But you thought you were so intelligent. So invincible, so above the rules, that you decided you alone knew more than everyone else. One of the assistants tried to defend his boss. Mr. Anderson, with all due respect, who are you to question the general manager's decisions? Frank looked at him, and for the first time since he entered the hotel that morning, he allowed a small smile to appear on his lips. It was a sad, tired smile, but it also contained a hint of irony. Who am I? He repeated the question, walking to one of the walls where there was a framed photograph. It was from 1998, showing the first meeting of the hotel's board of directors after the restructuring that saved it from bankruptcy. Frank pointed to one of the men in the photo, a young man, only 45 years old at the time, smiling next to Mrs. Margaret Thompson. That's me, 25 years ago, when this hotel was on the verge of collapse, when employees weren't getting paid, when suppliers threatened lawsuits, when the competition expected to see us close. I invested everything I had to save it. He turned to face the four seated men, and now his voice carried a weight that wasn't there before. A weight of decades, of sacrifices, of sleepless nights worrying about hundreds of families who depended on that hotel. I sold my construction company, mortgaged my properties, convinced other investors to trust when no one else would. And for 25 years I have been the majority shareholder of this hotel, controlling 67% of the shares through fiduciary structures that I kept private because I never sought spotlights or recognition. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael had stopped breathing. His assistants were pale, looking at each other in growing panic. So, to answer your question, Frank walked back to his chair, sitting down slowly as if the weight of it all was finally taking its toll. I own this hotel. I am the one who decides who stays and who goes. I am the person you just said has no value here. Wait a moment, breathe. Let this sink in. If you're feeling what I'm feeling now, that mix of justice, of I knew it, of wanting to shout at the screen, then you understand why this channel exists. But here's my question for you. Not for likes, not for the algorithm, but because I really want to know. Have you ever judged someone by their appearance and then discovered who that person really was? Did you feel that knot in your stomach when you realized you were unfair? Tell your story in the comments. I want to read every single one. And subscribe, because the end of this story will make you question all your certainties about success, power, and what truly matters in life. Michael Davis remained seated, completely motionless, as if someone had pressed the pause button on his life. His brain tried to process what he had just heard, but it was impossible. That old man in worn canvas shoes and a stained linen shirt couldn't be the owner of the hotel. He couldn't be the man who controlled 67% of the shares. But he was. And deep down, Michael knew it was true. He knew it from the way Susan had treated him. He knew it from the photographs on the walls. He knew it from the full access credential. And most importantly, he knew it from Frank Anderson's gaze. A gaze that carried the silent weight of decades of decisions that saved jobs and built dreams. Mr. Anderson, Michael finally managed to speak, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry. I have no excuse for what I said, for how I treated you. Frank nodded slowly, but there was no relief in his expression. You don't owe your apologies to me, Michael. You owe them to every elderly person who walked in here and was treated as an inconvenience, to every humble worker who came looking for a job and was looked down upon. He stood up, walking to the window. Do you know how many times I've received complaints about the treatment in this hotel? Letters from humiliated elderly people, emails from single mothers treated as if they didn't deserve to be here, calls from small business owners who left feeling their project was worthless. He turned, facing Michael. I ignored those complaints. I thought, maybe they're isolated cases. Maybe Michael knows what he's doing. The numbers were good. Profits were up. So I ignored my instinct. He paused heavily. Until I decided to come and see for myself. And in less than 5 minutes, you showed me that all those complaints were true. That this hotel had become a temple of arrogance. Michael felt tears burning his eyes, but he fought to hold them back. What's going to happen now? Asked one of the assistants. Frank returned to his chair. Now we're going to remind this hotel what it exists for. He pressed the intercom. Susan, convene all employees. General meeting in 45 minutes. It's mandatory. 45 minutes later, the ballroom was packed. 278 employees murmured in confusion. On the screens, faces of dozens of workers connected virtually from other shifts. On the stage, only a chair and a microphone. Michael was in the front row, looking like a shipwreck survivor waiting for a rescue that wouldn't come. When Frank entered, walking slowly, the murmurs grew. Who was that old man? Why was he dressed like that? Sarah, in the middle of the auditorium, straightened in her chair as she recognized him. Frank walked onto the stage, sat down, and adjusted the microphone. For a long moment, he just looked at everyone. "Good morning," he finally said. "My name is Frank Anderson. Many of you don't know me, and that's my fault. I am the majority shareholder of this hotel. I have been for 25 years. A murmur swept through the auditorium. This morning I came dressed as I always dress, and in 5 minutes I was publicly humiliated by the general manager who told me I have no value here. The silence was absolute. I'm not saying this to create drama. I'm saying it because that moment showed that this hotel lost its essence. He stood up, walking to the edge of the stage. When we saved this hotel in 1998, we promised it would be for everyone in this country, not just the wealthy. For everyone. His voice was stronger now. But that promise was broken. It became a place where an expensive suit buys respect and simplicity earns contempt. He pointed at Michael. And I allowed this to happen by blindly trusting numbers, forgetting to check if we were treating people with dignity. He walked to the other side. This morning only one person treated me with kindness. Sarah, who dared to defend an unknown old man. "Sarah, could you please stand up?" Sarah hesitated, but slowly stood. "Thank you. You may sit." Frank returned to the center. "Starting today, things are really going to change." He paused dramatically. "Michael Davis is no longer the general manager of this hotel." The auditorium exploded. Michael closed his eyes, tears finally escaping. Not because he's incompetent with numbers. He's very good with figures. But being good with numbers means nothing if you're bad with people. Furthermore, his recent administrative decisions violated protocols and jeopardized our stability. He looked at Michael with sadness. "You have until the end of the day to clear out your office." Michael nodded, speechless. "Sarah," Frank turned his attention to her. "Starting tomorrow, you will be the interim general manager. If in 6 months you demonstrate that you can lead with numbers and heart, the position will be yours permanently." The shock on Sarah's face was complete. "I'm not ready." "No one is ready until they're given the opportunity," Frank interrupted her. "I trust you because I saw the courage to do the right thing. That is the only quality that matters in a leader." He addressed everyone. "I want each of you to ask yourselves every morning, am I treating people the way I would like to be treated? Am I looking beyond appearances?" His voice softened. "Because numbers mean nothing if we destroy human dignity. Hotel success is empty if it comes with cruelty." He sat down again. "My wife, Mary, died 10 years ago. She was a brilliant hotel administrator, but above all, she was kind. She used to say, 'Hospitality is just service.' What makes it special is the genuine warmth of someone who welcomes a guest like family." His voice trembled. "I lost that wisdom when I lost her. I drifted away, almost allowing her legacy to become something she would have hated." He composed himself. "But today that mistake ends. Today we return to principles. If someone cannot treat all people with respect, this is not their place." He stood up. "Thank you. Sarah, meet me upstairs in an hour." He left as he had entered, slowly, without fanfare. The auditorium remained silent for a minute. Then it started with one person. A maintenance employee began to applaud. Others joined until everyone was applauding, recognizing not the power of money but the power of what is right. 4 months later, everything had changed. Sarah implemented the Mary Protocol, monthly training on human hospitality. She removed exclusive VIP areas, installed free coffee for visitors, small things that said, "You are welcome." Guests returned. Mr. Henry from the family restaurant, humiliated years earlier, received a call from Sarah apologizing and offering him the catering contract. He brought 5 fellow business owners. Frank did not return to the office, but he started something new. Once a month he would visit different hotels in the chain, always dressed simply, without identification. He would observe, chat, feel the atmosphere. Then he would send handwritten reports to Sarah. Michael disappeared from the corporate hotel world. The truth was humble and redemptive. He worked as a volunteer at a foundation, teaching administration to young entrepreneurs from struggling neighborhoods, without salary, without publicity, just trying to repair what he had broken in himself. One rainy afternoon, 7 months later, Frank was in his woodworking shop in a quiet part of town. He was working on a mahogany table when he heard a knock. It was Sarah in jeans and a t-shirt. "Frank, I'm sorry to come without warning." "Come in, young lady." Would you like some coffee? They sat, drinking aromatic coffee with a hint of sweetness. I wanted to thank you for trusting me, for the opportunity no one else would have given me. Frank watched the rain. I gave you nothing you didn't deserve, just the opportunity to prove what I already knew was in you. And how did you know? You only saw me for 3 minutes. He looked at her. I saw the only thing that matters. I saw that when everyone else saw trash, you saw a human being. That can't be taught. She smiled through tears. The hotel is doing well. We've regained clients. Profits are stable, and people seem happy. That's the only thing that matters, Frank said. Numbers follow happy people. As she stood to leave, Frank stopped her. The board is going to vote on your permanence. My vote is already decided, and since I hold 67%, you can plan for the long term. She hugged him, emotional. When she left, Frank went to a shelf and picked up a photo of Mary. We did it, my love. We returned to the values you taught me. He put the photo back and returned to polishing the table. Outside, the rain washed the streets. In the historic district, 278 people worked, remembering that behind every guest is a human being with dignity who deserves respect, not because they are rich, but simply because they are human. Frank finished the table and smiled. It would be donated to a family in a struggling neighborhood. They would never know who made it, and that's how he wanted it. Because true value is not in what you possess, but in what you give, in how you treat others, and in the legacy of kindness you leave behind. Mary understood that. Frank had forgotten it. But now, thanks to a moment of humiliation transformed into transformation, he remembered, and that, more than any financial statement, was what allowed him to sleep in peace. We've reached the end, my friend. But before you go, I want to ask you a question from the bottom of my heart. What did this story leave you with? If you made it this far, I know something touched your soul. Maybe you remembered someone you misjudged. Maybe you thought about how you want to be treated. Maybe you felt that warmth in your chest when justice was served. This channel is about people, about stories that make us feel something true. If you want more stories like this that make you reflect on humanity and kindness, subscribe and activate notifications. But what I most want to know is, what was the biggest lesson you took away? Write in the comments. Tell us if you have ever been Frank, Michael, or Sarah. Let's create a community where we celebrate growth and remember that every person deserves dignity. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how much money we have or what clothes we wear. What matters is how we make others feel. And if this story helped you remember that, it fulfilled its purpose. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching until the end. Tomorrow, when you leave your house, be the Frank in someone's life. Be kind, be human, be the change. Until the next story, and may this one stay with you forever.